Yes, the Sony AZ7000ES has been around since early 2023, but currently it is still Sony's flagship AVR, and I finally got to take a spin with it as the brains of my brand new office theater setup. The only other unit I personally reviewed in this latest ES line of AVRs has been the AZ3000ES. The biggest difference between the two being the 7000 supports up to 13 channels compared to 9 channels with the 3000. That and the 7000 sports a full set of preouts to have some or all of your speakers powered with external amplification. With the 3000 you can only rely on the internal amps to power your speakers. So in this video I'll go over my impressions of the 7000ES, if it's worth the extra coin in 2025 to have full pre-out support, and mention a couple features that you may have glossed over when it was first introduced back in 2023. Let's get into it. Just to let you know up front, I'm going to go over some of the features, some of the specs, but not everything the AZ7000ES has to offer. Like I said in the intro, it's been out a couple of years with plenty of reviews on YouTube, including a glowing review from your boy Andrew Robinson. So if you're still on the fence or you need more information about the AZ7000ES, I trust you know how to get it online. Alrighty then, the flagship 13.2 channel Sony AZ7000ES AV receiver boasts a power rating of 140 watts per channel and 8 ohms when 2 channels are driven. When all 13 channels are driven though? Tough to say. 100 watts per channel maybe, possibly even less. But did you notice I said nothing about needing an external amp to power all 13 channels? Yeah, I'm looking at you, Denon and Marantz, because they love to stuff their AVRs with a certain number of internal amps, but then add the ability to process 2 more additional channels with the aid of an external amp. Not the 7000 though. In fact, the less expensive AZ5000ES is labeled as an 11.2 channel AVR, which actually has 11 amps inside its chassis. Unlike the Denon X3800H or 4800H that have 9 internal amps but can process a total of 11 channels. It's 2025, folks. Can everyone follow Sony's model at this point? Thanks. Moving on, the 7000 supports 8K 60Hz video content and 4K 120Hz content for next-gen gaming on your PS5 or Xbox Series X. It supports almost all of today's immersive audio formats, including Dolby Atmos, DTS:X, and IMAX Enhanced, for those of you interested in DTS:X audio on select Disney Plus titles. Only caveat though, you also need a compatible IMAX Enhanced TV, such as the new Sony BRAVIA 7, 8, or 9 4K UHD TVs that came out in 2024. You may have noticed that RO3D was left off the list. My apologies to you RO heads out there, like me. But one thing you may have missed when these first were launched is that the 7000 supports DTS:X Pro. Whoa! Yeah, if you weren't aware, DTS:X was made to... okay, we get it. Anywho, DTS:X was created to support configurations up to 12 channels, more commonly known nowadays as a 7.1.4 system. When larger home theaters became more commonplace, DTS:X Pro was created to precisely put effects in their rightful places within configurations ranging from 13 all the way to 32 channels. And surprisingly, there are a lot of AVRs and processors out there that support 13 or even 15 channels that don't support DTS:X Pro. I'm looking at you, Arcam and Anthem. I mean, honestly, it must come down to licensing fees and manufacturers not willing to pony up the extra cash. So I'm glad to see that Sony has included DTS:X Pro in the 7000 to more accurately place objects in 3D space, including front wides, if that's your jam. And not just native DTS:X mixes, even Dolby Atmos or 5.1 or 7.1 mixes might prove to be even more immersive using the DTS Neural X upmixer. Embrace the scientist in you and experiment to your heart's content if you happen to already own the 7000. As far as room calibration, the 7000 has Sony's Digital Cinema Auto Calibration 9 and 360 spatial sound mapping, combining the practical room correction you're used to, mainly time alignment, level matching, and EQ, with virtual calibration, that's 360 spatial sound mapping. And that 1-2 combo is tough to beat, let me tell you. Although on another note, in all the literature I come across online, it says the 7000 has a built-in high-performance 32-bit DAC. But for the life of me, I couldn't find exactly which DAC. It sure sounds good though, so you know, must be cool I guess. You can also control the AVR with your smartphone using the Sony Music Center app using the remote control that comes with it in tandem with either the on-screen display or front panel display. But beyond that, all the AVRs in Sony's ES line can also be controlled via web browser with seamless IP control integration, since the ES line is made for custom installers. With this being a Sony product who makes the PlayStation, it's no surprise that the 7000 supports HDMI 2.1, HDCP 2.3, and all the next-gen gaming features you would expect, like variable refresh rate and auto low latency mode. And it supports eARC, seamlessly sending high bandwidth audio like Dolby Atmos from your TV's built-in streaming apps back down a single HDMI cable and out through your speakers. Quickly going over the rear panel, starting at the top, we have our digital input section consisting of 2 optical and 1 coax input, followed by 3 trigger outputs, which is actually kind of cool. You don't see 3 on a lot of AVRs these days, just 2. An infrared remote section and an RS-232C connection. A total of 6 HDMI inputs, 4 of which can handle 8K 60 and 4K 120 signals, and 2 which can only handle up to 4K 60 signals. There is one main HDMI output, that's the one that supports eARC, and a second for a possible Zone 2 where you could potentially watch 2 different video sources simultaneously. There's an Ethernet port for more reliable internet connectivity, FM antenna, analog RCA audio inputs, Zone 2 and Zone 3 analog RCA outputs, and some legacy RCA video inputs and outputs. An S-Center out port for using your compatible Sony TV as your center channel, if you so choose. It has 2 subwoofer outputs and a complete set of 13 RCA pre-outs for all of your external amplification needs. And lastly, your corresponding speaker terminals for all 13 channels if you choose to power your entire system with its internal amps. On the software side of things, the 7000 supports Chromecast built-in, works with Google Assistant devices, supports Spotify Connect and Apple AirPlay 2, wireless music listening via Bluetooth, compatible with Sonos Port, and works as a Roon player. It's got HDR, folks, supporting HDR10, Dolby Vision, IMAX Enhanced, and HLG. Some honorable software mentions are center speaker uplift. If you have a center channel below your TV, the 7000 will do some software magic to virtually lift up the audio, making it seem more like the dialogue is coming from the center of your TV. But it also has a cool feature called dual center speaker, where instead of software changing things, you can rely on just hardware by connecting a center speaker above and below your TV screen to create a more convincing phantom center image. Let me know in the comments if there's another AVR out there with that feature, but I'm pretty sure that's strictly a Sony thing. Let's talk about price for a minute, because the 7000 is kind of an anomaly when it comes to your typical Sony tax, being known for having prices fairly high compared to similar products. The AZ3000ES I mentioned earlier, with no pre-outs and it supports 9 channels total, currently its price is basically $1,700. For the exact same price, you could get a Denon X3800H, which is also a 9-channel AVR, but as I mentioned before, it can process up to 11 channels with the help of an external amp. That, and you can upgrade the room correction software to Direct Live, for a small fee of course. The X3800H also has a full set of pre-outs, so if you had enough external amps, you could power all of your speakers that way. And let's not forget, it supports up to 4 subwoofers. A much better deal if you ask me. But then it flip-flops the other way around when comparing the 7000 to other AVRs in its class. The 7000 is currently just under $3,300. Comparing it again with Denon gets a little tricky though, since technically the X6800H would be kind of on par with the 7000, but it only has 11 internal amps. But again, you can process up to 13 with the help of an external amp. And right now it's just under $3,500, $200 more than the Sony 7000ES. Granted, the 6800H supports up to 4 subwoofers and Direct Live, so I think that might justify the higher price in my opinion. But if you're looking for a comparable AVR that has 13 internal amps like the 7000, you're looking at the older Denon X8500HA. When it was still in stock on Denon's website, it was $45.99. But now on Amazon, you might be able to find it for $3,500. Just saying. So for some reason, it's the more expensive Sony AVRs that are in a more competitive price range, whereas the lower tier products, the AZ3000ES, AZ1000ES, or even the AN1000, seem to be more expensive than the competition. Go figure. Honestly, what I'm getting at is spend more on Sony and end up saving more? Sure. Okay, unfortunately, I can't say that I have any personal experience with the AZ5000ES. But honestly, I'm just going to go out on a limb here and say it's pretty much the Diet Coke version of the 7000, supporting 2 less channels and a little bit less power, and that's about it. So compared to the 3000, is more power per channel and opting for a full set of pre-outs really worth the higher price tag? The short answer is yes. Most definitely yes. But don't think for a second that the 3000 is subpar when it comes to its internal amps. Let me tell you something that I haven't revealed on my channel yet. When I first got the Golden Ear speakers installed in my living room, I had the Marantz Cinema 70S as the main hub, with the 4 in-ceiling speakers being powered by the Stark Sound Fiera 8 external amp, and the small but mighty Golden Ear Force Field 30 subwoofer handling the low end. And boy was it good. Dynamics were through the roof, headroom for days, my friends. An incredible cinematic experience to say the least, even from a modest 4.1 setup. But honestly, it was a little too good, especially with the kids' bedrooms a short distance away from the living room. I distinctly remember watching The Incredibles one night and was blown away by the pristine sound. No wonder it took home the Oscar for Best Sound Editing back in 2005. But despite it being a fantastic sonic experience, it dawned on me there is no way that we would watch anything like that when the kids have gone to bed. Days following that screening of The Incredibles, even with the Marantz's dynamic compression on its highest level, reducing the impact of loud scenes, there were a couple times that my youngest daughter came out to let us know that what mommy and daddy were watching was too loud. Yikes. So I disconnected the Marantz and Stark amp, and for the past few months, the AZ3000ES has been the brains of my living room entertainment. I'm not saying it's weak by any means, hell no. What I'm saying is relying on the internal amps only just takes the dynamic edge off just a little bit. It still slaps when the action picks up, let me tell you. But the difference between loud and quiet scenes isn't as alarming and in your face as it was with the Marantz Stark combo. It's been perfect ever since I switched it up. Not too overbearing when my kids go to bed, but still packing a punch when the action picks up. You might be wondering, well, why didn't you just take the Stark amp out of the equation and leave the Marantz? The reason is power, dude. The Cinema 70S only outputs 50 watts per channel with 2 channels driven. That's why I'm glad it has a full set of pre-outs, you know what I'm saying? But you might be asking yourself, why am I going off on this tangent? Because now you might understand what I did experience in here once I got the 7000 up and running, having a 9.2.4 configuration, powered by some Aperion audio energy amps, and there's that Stark Fiera 8 again, powering the 4 height channels. Even while I was reviewing the 3000, I was impressed with the 360 spatial sound mapping and its ability to truly create a 3D bubble of sound, making those height objects come alive, man. But hearing 360 spatial sound mapping combined with all 13 speakers being powered by external amps, out of this world, no contest. The details, the clarity, the intelligible dialogue, the headroom allowing for no distortion whatsoever, no audible sign of compression during action scenes. It was so fun going through some of the demo scenes with this system firing on all cylinders. Do you know what I mean about compression during action scenes? This is honestly something I didn't notice until I upgraded 2 external amps. When you have a budget-friendly 7-channel AVR, for example, if you're using the internal amps exclusively, when action scenes pick up and you have dialogue, sound effects, bass hits, and music all fighting for your attention simultaneously, the AVR can only handle so much. There are more sounds happening overall, but it doesn't necessarily get that much louder, you know? You may think it is because of what you see on the screen, but it wasn't until I had external amps powering my speakers that I realized, oh, that's what I've been missing. You not only hear everything swell into a fierce crescendo of sounds, but you feel it too. Again, like a cinematic experience you might otherwise get in a movie theater. So, needless to say, the combo of Sony's Digital Cinema Audio Calibration 9, 360 spatial sound mapping, and external amps made my go-to demo scenes sound the most immersive I've ever heard them to date. That being said, the IOTA AVX17 preamp that I was rocking in the previous theater for a couple of years does edge out the 7000 in one category only: bass. And that's honestly because the AVX17 supports 4 subwoofers. That's when I got some truly cinematic chest-high hits and rumbles that flowed from my feet to my head. Didn't quite get the same effect with the 7002 subwoofers. With the latest offerings from Denon and Marantz now supporting 4 subwoofers, maybe that means Sony or Onkyo or other manufacturers are working on a support for up to 4 subwoofers as well? Fingers crossed. One thing I want to address though is that I've seen online that quite a few people have complained about the Sony ES line causing some loud hissing or pops when 360 spatial sound mapping is engaged. And let me tell you, I didn't exactly get hissing, but there were some moments where I started a 4K Blu-ray or I was switching between HDMI sources and I did get some pops. Not like a really loud startling pop, but a pop nonetheless, and me having an audio engineering background, I don't like pops. So that honestly was a little annoying, to be honest. But then again, it didn't make me want to throw it out the window or anything. So I'm not sure if that's still just a quirk with the ES line of Sony AVRs, but just wanted to let you know that's what happened while I was watching some things. So yes, the AZ7000ES isn't for everyone since it's kind of strange territory for a lot of consumers out there when you have support for 13 channels. I would assume the majority of you out there would be totally satisfied with a 7.2.4 system. And I totally get that. Because when you add 2 more channels, you either go with front wides or 6 heights. And only a small percentage of you out there want that, much less need that kind of configuration. That's typically reserved for more dedicated home theaters with a projector screen and multiple rows of seating. Or you're a weirdo like me with a modestly sized office theater. But it is really enticing knowing that the 7000 has DTS:X Pro. If you were wanting to upgrade to a system with front wide support, I would highly recommend the 7000 over any other AVR in its class. If you've heard too many reviews or stories about native Atmos tracks not utilizing front wides at all, guess what? DTS:X Neural X will utilize those front wides. And there are native Atmos tracks that do indeed engage your front wides. Dune Part 1 and 2, The Matrix, Godzilla vs. Kong, to name a few off the top of my head. And as far as flagship AVRs go, the AZ7000ES is top of the line in my opinion. My hope is though that Sony is secretly working on a dedicated processor to have their auto room calibration, 360 spatial sound mapping, support for 4 subwoofers, XLR connections, and you have to use external amps. We'll see how the Marantz AV10 compares once I get that up and running next. So be sure to subscribe if you aren't already so you don't miss it when that drops. But when it comes to AVRs, the AZ7000ES truly brings immersive to a whole new level with some very unique features you cannot find with any other manufacturer. Honestly, that's what I love about Sony in general. They are always trying out new stuff and seeing what sticks. I am such a fan of a company that tries new things and thinks outside of the box. And Sony is always on the cutting edge of technology. They're not all winners like the HT-AX7 that I reviewed a while ago, which just really didn't find its audience. But again, you really gotta respect Sony for even trying something like that. So there you have it, my friends. I really enjoyed taking the 7000 for a spin. It lived up to my expectations, and it would be the permanent brains of this operation if it had support for 4 subwoofers, XLR connections, and RO3D support. But just a reminder, I now have something that supports all of those things. So stay tuned for that. As always, this world is crazy as it is, so it only makes sense to be kind to each other out there. Don't just watch TV and movies, experience them in a totally immersive bubble with the Sony AZ7000ES. And of course, don't forget to appreciate sound design, my friends.